Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service here in Hernando County. And today I have my regular co-host Lily Browning, who is the Hernando County Florida Friendly Landscape Coordinator.
Pretty
And
close, yes. And I work for Hernando County Utilities. I work for the water department,
so if I have
water
a
and
dripping
sewer.
sink, I should call you.
If you have what?
A dripping sink?
No, you could call a plumber for that.
Oh, okay.
If, if you have a dripping meter on our side, then feel free, please, to call us. If you have a dripping sink, though, you do want to get that um, looked into because you don't want to pay us any more than you need to.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you, like right before Hurricane Ian, when it was coming this way, when every time you turn the TV on, it was a different track, right around the time when the line went like right over my house.
Hmm.
Um, I went outside and I had to hose something off or water the garden or something. I turned the hose off and it wouldn't go all the way off. The handle was broken. So I was able to turn it most of the way off and I screwed a hose thing on the other end, but it was still leaking some water and couldn't get a plumber out there until
No,
after the
I'm sure.
hurricane, I think.
Right, I'm sure.
So I'm sure I got a little bump in my water bill,
If
but
you would
they,
like me to check on that later, I can see if your consumption went up or not.
oh, I'm sure you'll see that it went up. I
Yeah.
don't think it's not like it was just turned on full blast and
Right. I
left.
don't think it's going to be a significant amount from what you described.
Yeah, because
Now,
we
if
even
you
had
have a terrible problem where water is just pouring out like out of a fire hose, out of your house, if you had
mm,
a toilet leak, something where you utilize, you accidentally used over 50,000 gallons that month, you at Hernando County Utilities, I can't speak for anywhere else, call customer service. Once a year, you can get an adjustment on your bill if something like that happens to you. And I don't know exactly how it works. You need to talk to customer service, but they will make that once a year adjustment, kind of averaging in. You'll have to make like a good faith payment while they uh, figure it out for you. And then you might end up paying like something resembling your average, or maybe a little more.
uh-huh.
Um, um, but you only get one of those once a year. You get the same thing, the same adjustment if you put down new sod and are going to use water to put down that new sod. So I suggest to everyone I would save that adjustment for in case you have a huge leak because the sod is a planned thing and you should budget the extra water for that.
Hmm.
Plus, if you follow the watering restrictions for new sod, you and I both know, we tracked someone who did it. You're not going to spend tremendously more watering it in.
Yeah, your bill is going to go up, but it's not going to go up by $1,000 in a month.
And I have seen it $1,000 a month from people who got new sod in, and the sod installer just said, "Oh, just put on each zone for an hour, each zone for an hour every day. It'll be fine."
Yeah, or run your system for the normal amount of time, but do it 5 times a day for a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
And then you end up blowing through so much water, you get your water bill, and it's 4 digits.
that is not. Unfortunately, that is not an unusual event, occurrence. So yeah, people can get adjustments for that as well, but that's your one a year. But that's not the way to water in new sod. Even if we're not talking about money wasting and water wasting, that's not the way to establish new sod.
Yeah, because new sod needs water. You don't want to let it totally dry out, but it doesn't need 3 feet of water. I mean, this is sod, not rice you're putting in the front yard.
Exactly. Don't have any yaks walking around out there.
if you have a water buffalo in the backyard and you're putting in rice and, you want to raise goldfish, that might be a little bit different, but normal folk don't need to. And I know that we worked with neighborhoods before, and I'll go to a neighborhood and they say, all of our lawns are dying because we can't water enough. I'm like, it's the middle of summer.
We're getting ready.
I live a mile away. It's raining every other day at my house. You don't need, if you do that, plus you run your sprinklers once a week, you're looking at potentially 2 feet of water a month. How much water does your grass need? 3 feet of water?
Yeah, it goes, a healthy stand of grass should have, pretty long roots, but really, what's the longest they're going to get? Maybe 8 inches.
Oh, I've never, they say Bahia grass, and an old Bahia lawn, if you start looking very closely, you'll find some deep roots.
Mm-hmm.
Typically with St. Augustine and even most Bahia, the roots aren't more than 3 inches long on
Depends
average.
on the time of year as well. But
Yeah.
so that 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch that we recommend that you apply will reach down how far into the soil profile?
Oh, 1 inch of water applied to a very, very sandy soil
You go
will
down
do
12 inches.
12 inches through the soil profile.
Right.
So 1 inch of water goes 1 foot down, and your grass roots don't go deeper than 1 foot down.
Right. So, yeah, there's no, and watering it more than that, you may actually encourage a shallow root system, which is why it starts looking bad, because you have created a hydroponic lawn that has very shallow roots that needs you to keep giving it the handouts of the water instead of the roots reaching down and finding that water. So
your lawn has a little water monkey on its back. I'm going to get a stuffed water monkey. We need to make one and use it for a visual aid when we're talking neighborhood. Guys, this is your water monkey on your back. We need to get rid of the water monkey.
Yes.
You guys are addicted to, and your lawns are addicted to 3 feet of water a month. We can't keep doing that.
No, that is not sustainable. Good morning, Cindy, and good morning, Monique.
Yes, sorry, didn't want to ignore both of you. Good morning, Cindy. Good morning, Monique. And we have at least another person or two, somebody else on here. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and please ask. We'll do our very best to answer them. We've had this virtual plant clinic going for 2.5 years. It'll be 3 years in April. And I think I printed it this morning, still sitting on the printer. The number of YouTube views for these episodes that are saved on YouTube, and the number of people who join us live, and the number of people who watch it on Facebook after the fact. Here, I can tell you that. Here, I can tell you my YouTube views also. The class that we did about growing strawberries in your Florida garden? I had the University
I didn't
of Florida.
do that. You did it, yes.
Yeah, Dr. Whitaker taught that class, and he's the strawberry breeder for University of Florida. Most of the varieties of strawberries that you might be thinking or actually growing in your yard, Radiance, and there's a couple of others I can't remember. He bred all them basically. This past year got over 3,400 views.
I think, all your edible classes, people are looking into permaculture, varying degrees of it. Some people are getting majorly into it. Some are, just some. I think that's the areas that people are attracted to, growing more edibles on the property that they have. It's kind of funny because the way I grew up, I'm sure my mother never knew the word permaculture or ever thought about it, or, how they talk about in landscape design, creating different rooms. But the yard I grew up in, Pittsburgh anyway, was on different levels. So it was, because it's Pittsburgh and nothing is flat, so it was more conducive to creating these different rooms. But she had a huge vegetable garden. She had a grape arbor. We had raspberries growing. We had a cherry tree. All that mixed in with the places where there was just lawn to run around with. I'm positive we never did anything but mow it. And, then some ornamental, beautiful flowers and stuff too. She had like all those things happening. So,
Yeah, now we have a lot of new terminology for it, and everybody wants to be organic and sustainable and all natural. In the past, they grew stuff.
yeah. She had an apple tree, but I remember when I was very, very, very little, I kind of just remember, her frustration, and it came down. So I think it either was a sick tree or there was a rat problem. That's what I'm thinking happened. So then the apple tree was gone. But
well, growing up in Maryland, we had neighbors who had apple trees, and they rarely ate the apples. And we had other neighbors that had pear trees, and we had the little Seckel pears and then the brown ones. We had like 3 different kinds of pears in the neighborhood that you could just walk in somebody's yard and start eating them, basically.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, then there are the crab apples up north that nobody eats, and they get slimy and slippy, and people.
And wasps. Wasps love them. We would have a million wasps on the rotting crab apples. And all those things, I'm thinking now, like, oh my gosh, if I had them all in my yard now, I'd be canning them and I'd be making them.
Oh, yeah.
You can can crab apples and make
Sure.
stuff.
There were some people who made use of the crab apples, but over time, it's like, so my grandparents' generation would have made use of the crab apples, but then over time, I think it was, people started going to work, and or the women did, and there was just less done in the home, with preserving what they had. Man, we've already jumped to the survey portion of our.
Oh, I'm busy.
Yeah, I see that.
So in the comments, I just shared a link to our very short and apparently very painless survey. So if you haven't had a chance to take that yet, please do. For anybody who's watching this as a recording after the fact, please feel free to go ahead and click on that and take it also. If you enjoy these classes and presentations, take just a minute to help me out by taking the survey. I just checked on my paperwork as a general rule, because when we do this, it's saved on Facebook as a video, and then people over the next week or so will watch each episode. We're getting on average between 200 and 250 views a week of this after the fact.
So that's fantastic. Yeah. Yes. Monique talking about her grandfather's huge vegetable garden. I call my mother's huge, but the whole yard in my mind was huge, and I go back and look at it, and it's not. I was smaller, but I mean, it was a fantastic place to grow up. Yeah. Her mother always had a beautiful ornamental garden. Yep. You have lawn and landscaping. Yeah. I think that's what most of us have. You, Dr. Lester, have, you're growing edibles and things. I just have not taken the time to do that. So
yes, I have a vegetable garden, and given enough time, I will end up basically farming my entire backyard.
There you go. Sounds perfect.
Oh, I weighed my calabaza squash that I grew this past summer and harvested. I only got 4 squash, but added up between all 4 of them, a grand total of 83 pounds.
Wow.
I got 83 pounds worth of food by growing calabaza squash. So, of course, next year in the summer, I'm going to fill the whole backyard with calabaza squash vines. And I'll try to grow as much as I can. Now I have to figure out what to do with what I have. I still need to. I did cut into the first one, and we had some for dinner. It was fantastic.
Take a picture. I want to see what this calabaza squash looks like.
Oh, I'll take pictures, and this weekend I'm going to have to freeze some. It can
Okay.
be cut up. Yeah, it is a winter squash, so you have to peel or cut away the outside
Mhm.
covering. So think pumpkin or butternut squash.
Yes.
And you can take it and cube it up and blanch it and freeze it. So when I do that, I'll get some pictures at least. And I'm seriously thinking about getting a nice electric canner, which is different from the old school canners, which is basically a big pot
Yeah.
that you put on
Use
top of your
steam
stove.
and pressure. Yeah.
Because I have a flat ceramic surface stove, it's really hard to get it hot enough and steady enough to pressure can in one of those pots. If you have a gas stove or the electric one with the open coils,
Yeah.
it gets things hotter. But now they make electric ones where you get your stuff, you put it in the quart jars, you put them in, you push the button, you have to keep checking it and push to the next stage, but it's all automatic and
Is
automated.
that like a pressure cooker?
No,
what
it's
you're
not the
describing?
same as like one of the pots, Instapots.
Right.
They do cook by pressure cooking,
Mhm.
but you have no way of knowing or setting the pressure that it's cooking at. This, you do set the pressure, and you could do water bath
Right.
canning. So you can take these, fill it with water. It has a rack on the bottom. You put your jars in and close it, and it gets to the right temperature, and you set the right amount of time.
I'm sure I've seen that. That can't be new. That scene, I swear I've seen my mother and sisters using that very type
No,
of thing.
the electric ones, you plug in. They don't sit on the stove.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
Sam wants to know when to
canning.
start.
So Instant Pot is not a canner, and canner is not an Instapot. You can't use them
I am
interchangeably.
talking pre-Instapots.
Mhm.
There was this device of which you describe.
Yeah, and you put the lid on, and it has a gauge on top,
Yes.
but it still has to sit on top of your stove. That's where it's getting its heat from.
Okay. I was gonna say, I'm sure I saw those things in the 70s. But Sam wants to know when is the best time to start a vegetable garden using seeds in Central Florida.
Today.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Today is the best day. This weekend is a very, very good time. If you go to, let me find a link here, because I got links for just about everything today.
You're really
Let me go and share the link
to the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide. I'm just feeling like that's what you're going to share with us.
No. This is a link to the Hernando County government's YouTube page. And if you go there and look under the playlist, you're going to find one for Lily, and she talks about flowers and shady stuff and mulch and things like that. If you look at the extension one, which is mine,
96 videos where I'm talking about flowers and stuff.
Yeah, she does just flowers and stuff. So if you want flower and stuff information, check out her playlist. If you check out mine for extension, we just finished a series of classes on fall and winter vegetable gardening. And the first class, Have Your Best Winter Vegetable Garden Ever, is up there. And others are following soon. I need to send them to John, but I don't want to overwhelm him, so I have to kind of space them out. But you can go ahead and watch that video. It tells you everything you need to know about what to grow this time of year. But right now is the time to plant all your cool season things from seed outside.
I don't mind overwhelming John. I send him a video a week. And he probably has yesterday's already up on YouTube. I didn't check, but I bet you he does. And that was all about mulch, which mulch can be used in the vegetable garden as well. So.
Yes, I know that he has the best fall and winter vegetable garden ever one up, and he also has controlling pests in the winter vegetable garden up. And the rest are following, so they will eventually be on our YouTube channel, our YouTube playlists on there. So, Lily, here's a question for you.
Lots of seeds sprout and get grassy under Susan's bird feeder. Less than 2% seem to survive and make seed heads. Are they treated, or am I needing to add some sort of fertilizer? Is it just being 60% shade area? Would love not to have to buy so much bird seed. I would say probably whatever is in the bird seed is not something that is necessarily going to grow well in Florida. That would be my first guess. But being in the shade certainly adds to that issue. And those seeds, you know, I don't know exactly how they create bird seed. Like I said, I'm sure all of the seeds are not something that will grow in Florida well. And if they are made for bird seed, you know, they're made to be ingested. They're not necessarily, you know, made like the little seed packets you would buy to plant in the ground. So I think if you get anything that comes up, you're just lucky. But it is not, I don't know that they necessarily put anything on it to stop it from germinating. They may, so that otherwise they might have a whole bunch of stuff growing in their storehouses, but or they may just use, you know, seeds that they know aren't overly prolific as well.
You know, what they treat seeds with normally would be a fungicide, and you wouldn't do that to bird seed that you want birds to eat.
Okay.
And
So
I
they
know
use,
that
yeah.
the bird seed includes sunflowers, which grow here, but you would normally take the seed and properly plant it. And things like sorghum and other plants that probably don't grow really well here, or you have to grow in the right time of year. So you can, for an experiment, try planting the bird seed and see what comes up.
Yeah, instead of just waiting for it to drop and plant itself, take some out, put them in little pots, experiment, see what happens. Yeah, and yeah, definitely all of those things that we mentioned need sunlight to grow, if they're going to grow at all in Florida.
And it looks like we veered off into canning today, because Lori says the canner sounds interesting. I have a flat top stove also. What is the brand name? I'm pretty sure it's Presto, and I'm looking at Amazon. So not endorsing either one. That's just what I'm looking at. There's a couple different brands. Believe it or not, I'm the member of a whole bunch of different Facebook groups. Everything from gardening to kayaking to social media. I'm even a member of a couple different canning groups. And every time I see somebody ask a question or comment on it, everybody else says, I got one, I love it, it's great. People say I've been canning for 20 years and I just bought an electric one and this is fantastic. So I've seen a lot of really good comments overall. Whatever brand you're thinking about getting, you can look up the reviews and make the decision. But I'm probably going to, as soon as I get a chance to order it, get it, unpack it, get it. I got Calabasa to can right now, so.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see what Tari has.
Tari says, hello, I have an exposed raised bed that the squirrels cannot resist. Some plants in the bed are too large to add my cages for protection, and I just added some carrot seeds. Can I sprinkle cayenne or some other hot pepper or dry spice on the soil as a deterrent? You can. If you sprinkle dry cayenne on the surface, it's not going to hurt your plants, doesn't hurt the soil. It's not a pollutant, doesn't hurt the groundwater, so it's not dangerous. I've always learned or been told that controls like that for animals, and whether it's a squirrel or deer or birds or whatever, rabbits, at first it works, but then after a bit, either the squirrel learns to hold its nose and just still go in the cayenne, Birds, they say to hang CDs, if anybody has CDs anymore, from a
Right,
string.
have them in
That
closets, that's what you should do with them. Yes.
scares them away for a bit. The owl that you put outside will scare the birds away for a little bit, and then after that, the birds look at it like, that owl doesn't move. Do you think
Yeah,
it's
it's
alive? I
kind
don't
of
think
like
it's a
the
real
same,
owl.
it's the same thing as when you, for a week, pass the same sheriff's car in the median, and you realize after the first day or so, like, nobody's in there. So
Yeah,
it's the same
it's empty.
concept.
That's just a junk car.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll work the first time you go by.
So squirrels are tough. Squirrels dig in my vegetable garden, and it makes me angry. Fortunately, they don't do much damage. You could try putting chicken wire over the top, screening to keep them out. A lot of times, once the plants get up and growing, they're not going to dig in it much. Cayenne can help. Garlic can help. Taking garlic and mixing it with water and spraying it so it smells really strong like garlic will deter a number of things.
Like vampires?
Like vampires, yeah, but usually only temporarily. And obviously, after you water or it rains, it's going to wash away. You need to spray it again. But worth trying. Hope that you have some red-tailed or red-shouldered hawks that move into the neighborhood because they'll put a dent in the squirrel population. And rabbits are funny because I'll have them in my front yard for a while. Then I'll go months with no rabbits. Then all of a sudden they come back and I'll see 2 or 3 rabbits out there. So
It's the coyotes. I can tell you it's the coyotes. Uh-oh,
Yeah.
Corey, we're going to give you some demerits for being late.
That's okay. We record this so that you can, if whatever you missed, the really important stuff at the very beginning, you can catch later on.
You would have liked the stuff at the very beginning. I was talking about the unintentional permaculture yard I grew up in. And my mother was, she had me late, so she was born in 1922, grew up through all the Depression, and that's just what they did. She came from a family that made as much of their own food as possible, and that was, even though she lived in the city, we had a pretty big yard for being in the city. I think it was the original house on the street that once was a farm. So we weren't, all the rest of the houses were like row houses made for steel workers, but ours was kind of set aside, and I think we had like a half an acre, and she made use of that as much as she possibly could. So
Yeah, a lot of people like a great big lawn, but traditionally, if you have property, whether it's a quarter acre or, larger, you're not going to waste all that much space on a lawn. Probably the most interesting thing I've seen is down in Homestead, back in some of the neighborhoods where people have houses and live there.
mhm.
There's, I guess, a subdivision or a development, and everybody has big yard. I think everybody's on about an acre, but they're all lined up next to each other, boom, 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 and the house is set way back from the road, and the whole area that would be lawn between the house and the street is fruit trees in a grove, lined up,
Oh wow,
spaced
that's
correctly
cool.
apart. Keep in mind, you can live in Homestead and you can have a couple mango trees, a couple lychee, a
Sure.
couple longan, a couple of mameys, all those avocados, they all grow great down there. So I'm thinking, man, if I lived here, yeah, we have a variety of trees all lined up neatly. I don't care if I don't have a whole lot of grass. It's that much less to cut.
Yes.
Now, fruit trees take work. They don't care for themselves and do everything completely on their own. They have to be pruned down there. They have to be irrigated on occasion.
You
spend
have to get the
water.
fruit before the rats do.
Yeah, you got micro irrigation lines you need to check. You need to watch out for animals and rats. But you could grow an awful lot of fruit down there. There's a lot of different variety and things that grow very well down there in Homestead.
He wants to know if it's a grove of the same tree. Are we fighting
Stop
with
it.
each other? Or mixes? Is it like fruit cocktail, or is it? all the same.
It looked mixed. It was not like all avocados or all lychees or anything. It looked like a mixture from what I could see. And looked like a great, I mean, it's probably not for everybody. I'm sure people move there and they're like, I don't want fruit trees. I just want a great big lawn like I had in Michigan or wherever they're
If
coming
I have
from.
fruit trees, I'll have rats on my roof. Yeah.
Yeah, fruit trees are just going to attract rats. You already have rats. They're in your neighborhood. They're in my neighborhood. They're in everybody's neighborhood. You just don't want to leave lots of rotting fruit on the ground to attract them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Well, look who's here.
Look who's back. Austin, good morning.
From Wisconsin. I think that's where he was. Did you see Bassem and this plant that he recommends?
Yes, I'm trying to click on it and we're fighting each other.
Fighting for control of the screen.
Yes, Bassem says he has great success growing bed of nails plant, Solanum quitonsea, which I'm not really familiar with. You don't think
that's a tomato type of plant?
Yeah, it's in the tomato family, but he grows it around his vegetables to keep rabbits and squirrels away.
Bed of nails, does it have thorns? Does it have thorns, Bassem? We don't know about this. You have to let us know. Well, the thorns aren't going to bother the rabbits.
Let's look that up.
Oh, he says yes. Yes, it has thorns, I guess. And Corey, here, while you're looking that up, is talking about the herbaceous plants can be grown in the understory. I think he means of the fruit trees. He's talking about that layer thing and that permaculture of growing things in layers. You have the canopy trees, you have the fruit-bearing trees, you have the herbaceous shrubs, and then you have like the ground covers. I think I got that right.
And yes, this is a variety of nightshade plant, so it's very closely related to traditional tomatoes that has a lot of spikes and thorns on the leaves and the stems. So that is probably what, it has a very sharp thorn.
Well, it sounds kind of dangerous for you. So I would be real careful around there. Keeps any neighbors from helping themselves too.
And Corey has a comment on a rabbit and squirrel population.
Yeah, well, that's another way of taking advantage of what you have.
Believe it or not, I mentioned that I'm a member of a Facebook canning group. There were people on there, and I guess it must be that time of year.
It's hunting season.
You're from Pennsylvania. You should know all about this. When's the time of year when you can squirrels?
I don't know about squirrels. Ask Corey's friend.
You didn't can squirrels up in Pennsylvania?
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. But they don't talk about it as much as you hear about it in the South. I never heard about eating a squirrel till I came down here. Up there, generally, they stick with deer and bear. They're not. The bears aren't protected up there, so like they are here.
Yeah, the comments on canning deer meat, I think that's coming up. And bear, you always want to be sure to cook thoroughly. So that's my little hint for cooking bear.
All right. Yeah, it's kind of odd, kind of jarring for me when I go up there during hunting season. And I have seen like a bear carcass in the back of a pickup truck, just, and I'm like, whoa, because, that is so illegal here. But they're not as endangered up there as here. The deer certainly are not. Well, the more people take over these wild, animals' habitats, several things. We've taken over their habitat and we've gotten rid of their predators because farmers, of course, didn't want mountain lions or anything like that, wolves, eating their their livestock. So we've gotten rid of those things. And so up there in Pennsylvania, I truly do not know a single person who has not come into contact with a deer and their vehicle, you know, and they're just running. They're all over the city of Pittsburgh. You would not see a deer in the city when we left in 1978. Now I follow different photographers and stuff, and it's common. They
Wow.
love it. You can't go to a cemetery without seeing some, and they are in people's yards. So they really are getting, you know, pushed to more urban centers.
Yeah, I know the deer population's gone up all over Florida and in many areas. And apparently, everybody in Western Pennsylvania, where you're from, eats squirrels and rabbits.
In the
So,
40s and 50s, yes.
so maybe you could share some recipes next week.
Yeah. Where in Western Pennsylvania, Corey? I'm curious. I know there's plenty of, I can't say the word, non-urban areas. I can't say that, rural areas where they probably eat anything. So,
Okay, bingo. Corey is today's winner for bringing up the magic word.
he was late, but he brought it up. He brought poop to the table.
And Corey mentions that with bears, he's read an article, and I've seen articles also, where foresters will gather the bear poop to plant all the seeds, because bears are not completely vegetarian, but they do eat a lot of different fruits and things, and they're consuming a lot of seeds. And then when they go through the woods and they poop somewhere else, they're spreading the seeds. A lot of plants have a symbiotic relationship with bears and other animals to help spread their seeds far and wide. And he said berries and other seeds in their poop are used also. And
he mentioned Brownsville. Let me get it right. Brownsville and Beaver Falls and Cranberry. Yeah, I know all those places. Cranberry's near the airport, kind of going out to the airport, or yeah, past it. And the Cranberry's the hip and happening place right now. That's where all they're building developments, and like the football players are moving out there, and other families and things. And my mother's family was from that Butler County region for a trillion generations. And the Depression brought her family into the city of Pittsburgh. So,
well, Beaver Falls sounds like a real party town.
all three of those things that he mentioned are all mandatory Steeler fan areas. It's all in the greater Pittsburgh area. So, and they're all beautiful. Brownsville, that's the way they would say that. Brownsville is, there's a TV show that they have just, it was on for a couple seasons that was based there. I haven't seen it though. It was just fields and a gas station when you, yes. And I was there recently looking up some, you know, family history and housing developments. It's kind of sad. It's kind of like Florida, you know. So, any questions we have? I have beautiful narrow leaf sunflower blooming all over my wildflower bed. It looks pretty funky until it starts blooming, and it really spread itself all over. So that's probably what I have the most of in that bed. But as it's growing, that narrow leaf, it's a stalk and a bunch of narrow leaves, and they all like to clump together. They look like a bunch of cousinets growing there. And then now they have their beautiful yellow flowers this time of year, and it looks great.
Corey says that he killed all of his bare root strawberries, but learned a lot in the process.
Learned what not to. That's the whole thing about gardening in general. People say, oh, I don't have a green thumb. You know, no, you just haven't tried enough. I mean, you and I have probably killed our fair share of plants.
Oh, sure. I've gone through tons of seeds and tons of seedlings. With strawberries, it's very important. You have a little strawberry plant and it has roots and it has a crown. That crown has to be on top of the surface of the soil. Don't bury the crown, otherwise it will get diseases and die very quickly. So transplanting them correctly is very, very important. Then, of course, they have to be kept, very well watered until they root and get settled in. People still can't grasp the concept of strawberries being grown as an annual in Florida for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They all think that because they come from Beaver Falls in western Pennsylvania and strawberries last for years and years up there, you have your strawberry patch and out runners, you can cut them off and plant them somewhere. Down here, the summer, between the heat, humidity, diseases, insect pests, it's not worth keeping strawberries. Yeah, if you try real hard, you might be able to keep them alive. You may even get a strawberry or two off of them, but
Same
not
thing
much.
with like tomatoes too. Yeah.
Sure, they don't give out awards for keeping that tomato plant or strawberry plant alive the longest. You
Why
need
not?
to.
You could create them.
And what Corey did was he soaked them too long. They started to rot. Then he let them dry out too much when they had new growth. So that happens.
Mm-hmm. And you're growing strawberries is at a totally different time. Shouldn't you start like now?
Yes, you should have started anywhere between a month ago and right now putting them in the ground.
And you're going to
commercial
harvest
growers,
them.
our commercial people here in Hernando County, J&G has their strawberries in. Upicotopia, I believe, has his in, and he has some plants for sale. But here in and I guarantee you, in Plant City, if you drive around the back areas there where they still have farms,
Sure.
their strawberries are all in the ground and getting up and going. Anymore, the very first strawberries you can find for Christmas, which is early.
And we're going to be harvesting them, what, February, March? Whereas up north, the harvest doesn't even begin till June.
Yeah, here you get your biggest harvest February, March.
And that's when the strawberry festival is. Yes.
Yeah, you can grow them into April and May. The problem is in the commercial market, the California strawberries come on the market that time. So the price crashes. So if you're a strawberry grower, it's not even worth it to pay people to go out there and pick them after a certain point because the price you're getting is so low.
And that's why they then move on to blueberries to be the first in that market in April and May. And by end of May, Georgia blueberries are coming. So there's no longer that edge anymore, and they open up for you pick.
Yep. So if you're growing commercially, you're looking for that window of opportunity, the time when if you have a good harvest, you'll make really good money.
Mm-hmm.
For a homeowner, your harvest seasons are going to be a little bit different than what you may see farmers doing, but it's going to be close. So when's the last time you saw a commercial strawberry grower growing strawberries in Florida in June, July, and August?
No, never.
Never. Why do you think that is?
Because they won't grow in the heat and humidity. They'll just wither away like Corey's.
So people who want to argue that you can do it, commercial growers would tend to disagree.
Yes. Cindy.
Yeah, Corey says that the commercial growers just got their extras to all the folks that are selling to homeowners and hobbyists. Yeah, commercial growers will buy thousands or tens of thousands of plants at a time. So they always get first dibs before like a homeowner who wants to buy 10 plants.
Sure.
So for homeowners, it can be very, very difficult to find those plants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Cindy, I saw the beginning of that mention on TV about Wish Farms. Mr. I think their name is Wishalewski, and he came from New York City. He was selling produce and strawberries on the street in the 20s. They moved to Florida. Big success story now. Multi-generational family-run business. Wish Farms is a really, really big strawberry grower still in Central Florida.
Okay. So, but they use different plants every year. You may think, you're thinking like blueberries, apples, oranges, like, the same plant, it's going to keep producing fruit each year. No, they take them out,
Nope.
compost them.
When it's time for them to go, they go.
Yeah.
And what they do is when the prices start to crash, even though they could grow strawberries a little bit longer, they'll yank them all up and they'll plant hot peppers, eggplants, yellow squash, zucchini squash, cantaloupes, and probably a few other things in the early spring. So you get a big harvest and a big flush from there. If you go anywhere near Plant City, Lakeland area, and stop at any of the big farmers markets there or roadside stands, that's where a lot of that stuff comes from that time of year.
Mm-hmm. So Corey had 3 to 4 flushes last year. A last crappy one. He keeps bringing up food. In late May, early June, cold knocked 1 flush of the flowers out.
Yeah, strawberries, if we get a really bad cold front, can knock all the flowers and the little tiny fruit off, but the plants will recover and grow back out. It just knocks you back a little bit.
Should we, as homeowners, if we're going to have a cold freeze, should we do what the farmers do and keep our sprinklers on those plants?
No, because waste too much water. You have to have a special system that continuously applies water because you don't want the water to freeze and make ice. That's going to cause even more damage to your plants. So constantly spraying irrigation water on the plants works for commercial growers because of how they do it. Not recommended for home growers.
It looks like they have an ice blanket there, but it is the energy that is produced at that second that you reach 32 degrees that actually helps to warm the plants. So it has to be a continual process. If they turn those things off and they got to 31 degrees, the plants would be destroyed. So first of all, it may not be your watering day. Your zones take turns turning off and on. It's not something you can stop, and it's not something homeowners are allowed to do. So, and that's why you see the bleary-eyed farmers up all night long checking those sprinklers to make sure they never turn off.
Yes, and they used to use the big 55-gallon cans and other means to keep things warm. For the citrus trees, they burn tires.
Melting pots? Is that what they were?
The sludge pots.
Smudge.
And you could burn old tires and diesel and use basically an airplane propeller run by a 350 engine to blow the warm air around. We don't recommend that.
Yeah.
No smudge pots.
I've seen, like in older places you can visit, like Cross Creek and stuff. Went with our friend Alice Herden, and she didn't know what it was there in their barn. And I said, I think that's a smudge pot. They would put these around the citrus trees to try, and then they'd walk around fanning the smoke and the heat, trying to keep it all warm. Now, how can you, though, what is the modern day of trying to emulate that? They talk about using light bulbs under blankets.
You can. That can be dangerous. You don't want to start a fire.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're covering a small fruit tree or a tropical plant with a sheet or a blanket or something like that, and you put even just like a lamp with a low wattage bulb underneath it, that will give off heat to keep it warmer. Not the LED bulbs that we use, but the old-fashioned ones, the incandescent ones. But you don't want to start a fire. For most plants, the best thing to do is plant things that are appropriate for that time of year. You don't really have to worry about major cold. With my vegetable garden, I don't have to worry when a cold front comes through. For most of the winter, if I put spring things in a little bit early and we get a late freeze or frost, yeah, that's a problem. But covering with blankets and sheets, we need to go through our closets and get rid of a bunch of old blankets, sheets, things like that. I told my wife, let me know. I'll stick them in the garage because I do have small tropical fruit plants and things like that. I'll put them to good use. She said, that's great.
Yep, and that's what you should use. It's cloth, not plastic.
Yeah, plastic or clear plastic that's not, it lets the cold permeate right through.
And can transfer the cold, because hardly anybody, the ideal situation for cold protection is to create like a tent around it that's not touching the plants at all. It has to totally reach the ground, because you are not wrapping up the plant like I am wrapped up in this sweater, because I am a mammal that produces my own heat. That's not what we're replicating with the plants. The plant cannot produce its own heat. We are getting the radiant heat from the ground. Therefore, the covering that you use has to touch the ground, hold it down with rocks. So the ideal situation would be it not even touch the plant, but that's not always possible. So if it does, you need a cloth that drapes all the way to the ground. Creating lollipops around the foliage only of your plants does what, Dr. Lester?
Pretty much nothing.
Nothing. Yes.
Would probably keep the physical frost from forming on the leaves, but other than that, it's not keeping it warm.
No, we need to, because we don't have permafrost here, our underground is never going to freeze, even if above ground does, for a short period of time. So just a few inches down, or an inch or so down, it is probably maybe 42, if, maybe warmer than that. So that's what you're trying to do, capture that radiant heat. And it doesn't need to be 73 degrees a day at the beach for that plant. It needs to be 33 degrees. So, unless it's a frost sensitive, something in South Florida and, in the 40s might damage it. But
yeah, and we always get questions about what plants do I cover? What do I need to protect? Is it going to get cold enough tonight for me to have to cover my viburnums or hollies or whatever?
No.
Okay, word of advice: if it grows in Western Pennsylvania, you don't ever need to cover it here for the cold.
Have you noticed absolutely nobody covers anything up north? That's just not a thing up there.
If it can't,
because they are sensitive plants they've already brought in for the winter.
Yeah.
To the sun porches or whatever. And the others are just on their own, So or it's appropriate to the region, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, here we try experimenting with putting different plants in the ground that don't tolerate the kind of cold that we'll normally get pretty much every winter for at least a night. And in that case, you need to know it in advance. You need to have a plan. People use a little greenhouse. You can build like a teepee over it with PVC, with bamboo. There's a lot of different things you could do to get this plant covered for the couple of cold nights that we normally have. But it shouldn't be a surprise that, if you're growing bananas, it shouldn't be a surprise that if it's going to get below freezing, either you cover them or you're going to have a lot of damage.
Which is what Corey is saying here. We used to use blankets and Christmas lights on tropicals or plants I shouldn't have had in the yard. It's not about it shouldn't, but
And then, but the problem is there's a lot of things that they sell at big box stores. The most obvious example right here in Hernando County is the Thai plants or tea plants, those red
Yeah.
things.
Hmm.
First time it gets down to freezing, they get hammered. They'll turn totally brown, die back to the ground. They almost always grow back in the spring,
Yep.
but they get completely knocked out. And
Lots of things will get damaged. Firebush, you guys in South Florida have humongous firebush because they don't freeze back. Here they're going to freeze back every single year, but they always come back. Hibiscus will do the same.
mhm.
That's a very good point there,
Yeah,
Corey.
good point
Yes.
from Corey.
That
That
they
they don't
don't.
try planting tomatoes when it's snowing up north, but people come down here and they try to plant tomatoes outside in July. People, if I moved up to Ohio and I started putting banana plants out in my front yard, the neighbors will look at me like I'm nuts. That doesn't grow up here. It's going to freeze and die. Yet people move here to Central Florida and I planted apples. What's wrong with them? This is Florida. You don't grow apples here. Buy apples at the grocery store. You'll get much bigger, better,
There are
tastier apples.
varieties that people try, those Israeli apples, those Anna apples. I've never really
It'll
heard
work.
of success stories, though.
I've heard of very few, and there are, believe it or not, one or two people who actually get a crop of decent apples off of them. Most people, the very best you're going to do is every couple of years you're going to get a couple that are like the size of a big glorified crab apple.
Hmm. And when they
that's
talk about, well, I got these Israeli apples, I'm just looking at them like, did you hear what you just said? Israel's the desert. We're not the desert. We have so much humidity. We can't be really compared to Israel, I don't think.
Yeah, and then other plants that have a name of a place in their name, the Arizona cypress. What's wrong with that?
Nothing, because I have a fantastic Arizona cypress in my yard. It's doing great.
But every summer we get a lot of phone calls from ones that we're doing great that all of a sudden give up the ghost, basically.
Yeah. If it does that, I won't be surprised. But I've had it quite some time. I'll have to take a picture. It was a Christmas tree. I'll have a picture for you next week. And it was a Christmas tree that we planted in the yard. Of course, I live in the Royal Highlands, which is pretty dry.
Yeah.
So it's happy at the moment. It's been there like 10 years.
Yeah, and it may keep doing well. I noticed today driving to work, I cut through a residential street, and one of the houses I'd never really noticed before, they had their sprinklers going this morning. And I'm thinking, oh, somebody in this neighborhood that's watering their yard. I kind of looked over and the grass looked freshly resodded, like it's been done within the last couple of years. And they had 4 Italian cypress along the driveway.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all the same height or very, very close to it. And they're all pretty tall. I'm thinking, oh,
yeah,
theirs are doing well. God bless them. But that usually doesn't work out well in the long run.
Although there's some in a really inhospitable area in front of a business on Spring Hill Drive, seem to be doing okay. But
not very often. Italian cypress, we see a lot of them die.
Leland cypress will die in 15 years. Leland cypress will die on their 15th birthday. They just will.
Yeah, and even the what's the other evergreen that people grow a lot of?
Arborvitae.
Arborvitae. There's so many yards in Spring Hill where you could tell somebody had a whole row of arborvitae. And they're all really big, but they're missing a few.
Yes.
It goes, boom, boom, empty spot, boom, boom, empty spot.
Yes. That's pretty typical.
Die. One by one. The soil will get too wet. The heat and humidity just eventually gets to them, and they give up. And during a wet summer, even if it's an average summer, we'll just see quite a few of them go. So not necessarily the best choice. Maybe you have one that does great, but we see a lot of them die.
Corey's talking about the apples. Out of the dozens of people you've known grow Anna and Dorset, he's seen 2 people that have had a good flush.
Yeah, and I've heard references to 1 or 2 people. Most people get them and they die within the first 1, 2, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
They get a lot of disease. Unless you want to be out there spraying a lot of fungicide on them.
And we have a lot of cedars. We have a lot of cedars just around here naturally in Florida. Why am I bringing that up? What does that have to do with apples, Dr. Lester?
Oh, apple cedar rusts?
Yes.
Which is a fungal rust disease that cycles back between apples or probably anything in that genus.
Mm-hmm.
And cedars, probably a number of different species of cedars.
Apples and cedars don't play well together.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, it looks like it's about that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I'm getting blown up with emails here today, but I do need to go and add a poll to my next class starting at noon. Have you ever put a poll in a Zoom class?
No, I don't have to keep track of things like you do.
I don't know how to do it, so I'm going to have to figure out how to do it.
But do check out Hernando County Government YouTube. Yesterday I did a class on Much Ado About Mulch. I think it went really well. And we're always surprised that you can talk about wood chips for an hour, but there's a lot to it. So, I think those who attended really liked it. I heard back from one, and he was a professional lawn care person who, wanted a PDF copy of the presentation. So.
Well, there's rocks and there's ground up tires and all kinds of fun stuff.
We discussed that. And how those are not recommended mulches.
Okay, everybody, I think with that, we are going to wrap it up here. Cindy,
Oh, yes.
You are very welcome.
I will not be happy, going home and it immediately turning dark. I will be happy not coming to work in the morning in the dark. So.
I know. I'm like, heading out the door in the morning is just barely light. I mean, 15 minutes before that, it's still pitch black. That's a little.
And I start work at 7:30. I don't think start just till 8. So
I'm rolling here 8-ish. It's 8-ish.
Okay. Well, I work for the county, so I start at right at 7:30, and it's dark. And I hate getting up in the dark.
Yeah.
It's very unnatural and hard to do.
That doesn't bother me, and I do get up early, so. It's good to get an early start on the day and conquer the morning.
Okay, yeah. All right.
And Susan says that the moon is rising at 4 a.m. Not up quite that early, but.
I see you haven't trained your dogs well. Mine are trained. They just wait until I get up. Yours makes you get up.
No, ours are kind of on an internal clock, but they know what time it is when it's time to get up, so they don't get up in the middle of the night. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and wrap it up. And I believe both myself and Lily will be back here again next Thursday at 10 a.m. for another episode of the Virtual Plant Clinic.
Yes.
And with that, let's go ahead and say goodbye and have a wonderful week. And don't forget to turn your clocks back. Back. Okay, turn your clocks back.
You fall back. Yes.
Okay. Fall back, everybody.
All righty.
Okay.
If you have an irrigation system, check it too when you put your clocks back.
Check your irrigation system and replace the battery in it too, because otherwise that little battery backup may be dead. So, okay. Thanks again, guys. Bye.
All right, we'll see you.